Good evening, I'm Bob Johnson and welcome to another election special programme here on Wycombe Sound. Tonight I will be broadcasting the two remaining interviews from the candidates who are standing in the Beaconsfield constituency. In a moment we will be hearing from the Conservative candidate Joy Morrissey, and then at 6:30pm it'll be the turn of the Independent candidate Adam Cleary. Yesterday we broadcast interviews with the Labour candidate Alexa Collins, the Independent Dominic Grieve and Zoe Hatch, who is standing for the Green Party. And you can hear all of those interviews with the candidates who are standing in both Wycombe and also in Beaconsfield, as well as two roundtable discussions with them on our website, which is wycombesound.org.uk. But tonight's first interview is when I was joined by the Conservative candidate standing in Beaconsfield, Joy Morrissey. And I started by asking her to tell us a little about herself.
I grew up in Ohio. I was born in Indiana, and I grew up on a farm. We moved to a farm when I was about 9. I had my first horse. I saved up. I had a little job helping to clean a church, and I saved up enough money to buy a horse. It was a thoroughbred right off the track, a terribly behaved, crazy horse that threw me so many times I lost count. I broke my nose, broke sort of every bone in my body. Kept him as a family pet. We had a lot of horses, a lot of chickens. So I love country life, rural life. I learned to work very hard. I went to university and studied international relations. I did a gap year in Kosovo and Albania after the war there. So that was an interesting experience and very positive. And I did my master's at the London School of Economics, so in European social policy.
I think already these things make you fairly unique, probably not only in the Beaconsfield
Such a
constituency,
niche,
but
like,
absolutely, yes.
I also studied Chinese in undergraduate, which was another sort of niche topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going...
We're really going mainstream here.
So how come then that you are in England?
Yes, that is... This had always been my dream to come to Great Britain. I've always loved English literature. I'd grown up, reading James Herriot. I always wanted to visit Yorkshire. I always wanted to Shakespeare. All the great writers. It had always been my dream to have an opportunity to study here. And when I came, having the opportunity to stay and work and live here and marry an Englishman was really. It literally was the dream, and I've loved it. I love everything about British culture. I love being British. I became a British citizen. It was the proudest experience of my life, apart from now being selected for Beaconsfield. And I love everything about England specifically. And it's just been an honor and a privilege to be part of the Conservative Party. I've been a councillor since 2014. I've worked for 2 MPs, and I worked for the Centre for Social Justice, which is Ian Duncan Smith's think tank. And everyone within the Conservative Party has been so incredibly welcoming and kind to me. And I love working in social justice, so I also have worked with a lot of prison charities. I've visited a lot of prisons across the UK, and youth justice charities as well. And I work with vulnerable care leavers as well as adult social care. So I'm an older person's champion and a housing and health champion.
Before you got into the politics, what were you employed as?
So after I did my sort of gap year in a war zone with Kosovo and Albania, studying international relations and Chinese, I auditioned for a regional theater. And in the States, they have Actors Equity, which is a union that if you want to be a professional stage actor, you have to join, but it takes a very, very long time. I auditioned and was the only person that got this year-long apprenticeship, which got me into the Professional Actors Union. So completely by chance, because I got it, I then became a professional actor. I got my Actors Equity card, my SAG card, my AFTRA card, and then started doing regional theater. And then I started doing some really low-budget, hilarious, not really hilarious, but just low-budget rom-coms. And then I went to LA and started doing line producing. So I think I'm much better behind the camera doing the budgets, doing the financial side of it rather than in front of the camera.
Again, the fact that you've done rom-coms, though, and you're standing as a candidate, I think makes you pretty unique. Probably out of everyone standing in the 2019 election. Let's leave the fact that you're from Ohio. Just that fact as well.
Yeah, I think I have my parents to thank for just encouraging me to be an individual. And what I love about the Conservative Party, I think the Conservative Party more than any other party is about the individual and sort of their ability to be successful or to take care of their family however they need to. But just, I think the rights of an individual are very important. And I had a wonderful upbringing where my parents really encouraged that sort of be your own person, don't be afraid to be yourself, and treat everyone with respect and decency. That's another thing.
When did you start getting interested in politics? Was that at a very young age?
Yes, I was one of those very nerdy children who loved model UN, and I had a picture of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan on my wall. So I wasn't cool. I was more someone who loved politics. There weren't a lot of female role models, so Margaret Thatcher, for me, was someone I really admired, and she was coming from the outside. She was a huge international figure. I mean, she was on par in our minds with, with the sort of the power three, as it were, during the Iron Curtain. I mean, she was a huge player on the international stage, and I just always respected and admired her. So it's been an honor to be able to be part of her party and stand up for her values as well.
So when you were over here, I'm assuming, therefore, that the Conservative Party was the only one that you were interested in joining?
Well, at LSE, everyone is a Labour supporter. So all my Labour friends were out, card-carrying Labour people, canvassing, pounding the streets. And I realized that I really did believe in sort of, you have to support business and entrepreneurship, and to be able to pay for the welfare state, you have to have people who are actually earning money. And I believed in the sort of conservative philosophies. And so that's why I joined the party, strictly so I could represent and help a party that I believed in, for no other reason than to help deliver leaflets and canvass, because I'd seen my Labour friends do it. And I did. And I met my local MP the first week I joined the party, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, how does one go from then handing
How does one go from this crazy tradition? No life plan.
Handing out the leaflets to then suddenly actually finding yourself standing in the Beaconsfield constituency?
I'm sure that's a question everyone is asking themselves. I think I love people. I've always been a community champion, and so my local MP asked me, because I was so involved already with a lot of local charities, to come and be her community outreach worker. And that was a new thing. A lot of MPs didn't have that. So basically, I worked on all the housing estates. I was the first Conservative elected to a housing estate management committee. I organized Somalian Day and all these community events, and I absolutely loved working with the community. So those ties as a local champion and then as a Conservative were something also people hadn't seen before. And I started a business club, and I organized apprenticeship fairs because I believe in apprenticeships and giving people opportunities. And so I just kept working, and my local work, people started saying, well, why don't you stand as a councillor? I thought, well, okay. I don't, and
it was as confident as that. You didn't think, well, hang on, I'm from Ohio, I'm in England, people are going to be saying, what are you doing here?
How did you get here? Well, I think because of my success in doing things like I saved a mental health walk-in center, and I believe in helping people and standing up for causes that I believe in, and I think what I was most surprised about standing as a councillor was topping the polls each time. I've stood twice, and I've had the highest votes of any councillor for the area. And I think that's a very humbling experience, because you feel that people know you as a community person. And I think that's where my track record has stood. I'm sure it's a shock to a lot of people, but I think that's the wonderful part about England and Great Britain as a whole, is that it's actually a very welcoming place and a very tolerant place. And I get very angry when there's this misconception. Actually, the place that is very intolerant oftentimes is a lot of the European countries. I thought I would go and be a Eurocrat, but I found it very unwelcoming. I found it very elitist, and the opposite has been true here. I found that, Great Britain has been one of the most welcoming and embracing places that you could ever live. I mean, I feel more British. I know I sound like I just got here, but but in my heart and my mind, this is my home. These are my values, and I feel so grateful to be able to be a part of it.
From what you're saying, were you surprised that we voted to leave the EU?
Well, I too voted to leave the EU. So, I mean, I was surprised and, surprised. I don't think a lot of people expected the result, but I think it was a very telling result. And I think we have to honor that. I'm a big believer in democracy, and that when people vote, we have to honor that result. So I am still very supportive of honoring the result of the referendum and leaving. And I think we have a great deal, and I will be supporting it if I'm elected. And I want to move forward. I want to move the country forward, deliver Brexit, and move on to the other issues that matter.
So how did you end up being the candidate for Beaconsfield? How were you chosen? How did you decide, actually, this is a constituency that I'm interested in, that I want to go and fight for? Well,
this is one of the best constituencies in the country, so I never dreamed that I would get even the opportunity, because it is one of the most beautiful, the best. I mean, it's one of the best constituencies because it has everything. The countryside, you're close to London, you have grammar schools, you have great transport links, you really have everything at your fingertips, and you have individual villages that have unique characteristics, and you can feel like you're in a village and you're still sort of have everything on your doorstep. And I can't think of another place that's like that. So this was honestly the dream I never thought possible. And a sort of bit of trivia, myself and Dominic were kind of called in at the last minute for both of our interviews, and we both stood against Martin Howe in both of our selections. So being chosen here was just honestly the greatest honor of my life. I mean, I did cry. I may have shed a tear. And also it just goes to show you the faith that the Conservative membership placed in me, and their tolerance. I was new. I'm not a QC. I'm not from an elite background. I'm just a working mom. And for them to take that chance on me, I'll never forget that. And I am eternally grateful to them.
What do you think are the most important issues in Beaconsfield at the moment?
Well, I think potholes are definitely an issue. I got a flat tire, I think, a couple days after driving around the constituency, so I can testify to that. Defending the grammar schools, standing up for the green belt, making sure that I'm someone who has stood up to sort of, I support Heathrow, but not Heathrow expansion. So I want to protect our air quality for future generations. I want to make sure that we protect the quality of life for people in Beaconsfield. And I want to be a local champion. I am someone who's interested in advocating for the local issues, both working with the council, but also working in Parliament.
If you did get into the Commons, what are the things that you would personally champion if you were to introduce a private member's bill, for example? What would that be about? Well,
I would absolutely love to have a private member's bill on disability assessment access. So basically, it's available now, but it's not. You have to really be a sort of very pushy parent to make sure that your child gets the proper assessment and then the proper support. And I'd like to make that a mandatory thing at a much younger age, so that children at primary school, everyone is properly assessed and given the support they need, because it's not even enough, especially even for a minor disability or something like if you have dyslexia or ADD, oftentimes that will go undiagnosed, and then the child will leave school with no qualifications, when actually, had they been diagnosed at an early age, given the proper support, they would have been fine and able to leave school with qualifications if they had gotten the sort of intervention that they needed early on. And this is something that shouldn't just be the right of a middle-class family. It should be the right of everyone. And so it's about equal opportunity so that people can succeed.
What do you consider that the role of an MP should be?
I think the role of an MP should be to advocate for the needs of your constituents, both locally and in Parliament, to scrutinize legislation and to speak for the needs of your constituents in Parliament. So asking questions that pertain to your constituents, but also standing up for the issues that matter. And for me, I am a true blue conservative, but the only two issues that I am sort of on the opposite side of are Heathrow expansion and HS2. So I'm also opposed to HS2. So I'll be saying that in Parliament whenever I can.
If there was a decision within your party that you disagreed with, but you were being told to vote for it, what would you do?
Well, I would vote for pretty much everything apart from HS2 and Heathrow expansion.
Okay.
So I don't think the transport minister is going to be my close friend.
What are your views on the recent Extinction Rebellion protests?
I mean, that's a tricky one because we all care about the environment, and I'm very passionate about green issues, and I think it's important that we raise these concerns, but I think it's also important that we don't frighten people with so much fear of environmental collapse that people have a hard time not coping, but I think we can raise these issues in a way that brings everyone together to discuss them rather than sort of creating a feeling of fear and anxiety, which is something I've noticed with young people. I hear this a lot with some of the young people that I work with. They're so anxious about climate-related issues, and I think helping talk through things with the facts and how we can proactively help might be a better solution to tackle this.
Yeah, I think that's
And
very,
also
very...
don't jump on the trains in the middle of I mean, that would really help things if I'm honest.
Yeah, particularly when they're underground trains that are run on electricity. Yeah, I'm
You're winning.
Yeah, I can see, I can see what you're saying. Bringing it back more locally, you've mentioned grammar schools a couple of times. What's your opinion on the setup that we have with regards to grammar schools in Buckinghamshire?
Well, I'd like to see more, actually. I mean, I know it's difficult to expand in areas, but we have certain places in the south of the constituency, in Iva and places like that would really love to have a grammar school, and so I'll be advocating for more grammar schools in the south of the constituency to make sure that we have educational opportunities for everyone.
What about rural issues locally? Again, you've mentioned how amazing the area, the constituency that you're standing is, particularly from a countryside point of view. What are the important issues there, you think?
I think protecting our green spaces, protecting our public walkways, making sure that people have access to, walking their dogs, riding the horses, but everyone can share the space. I think that's very important, that we protect any sort of public realm that everyone can enjoy the beautiful green spaces of Beaconsfield. And I think moving forward, the Conservatives have a very positive plan for how we will deal with agricultural subsidies and protecting farmers and making things more biodiverse. And I hope to be an advocate for the rural community as well. So,
what about the homeless problem, which isn't one of those that is that noticeable in places like Beaconsfield and Gerrards Cross, but speaking to people from Wycombe Homeless Connection, they very much say that actually, even in those areas, hidden homelessness is a big problem.
Well, I campaigned for a year and a half or so when I was at the Center for Social Justice, bringing forward a policy called Housing First, and it was a policy that specifically dealt with tackling rough sleeping. It was a policy that we actually got from Finland because they had developed it, but it's a great and very cost-effective way of tackling rough sleeping, and addresses the finding housing before you deal with the drug and alcohol-related issues. The West Midlands mayor has actually adopted it. It's been very effective in the West Midlands, and I hope that it's rolled out nationally. We also were successful in getting it in both the Labour and Conservative manifestos in the last general election. And I still do a lot of work with Crisis UK, and one of the things that I was recently working on this summer was the domestic violence bill. There was an amendment, and I was lobbying all MPs from every party for there's a housing allocation issue for homeless families when they claim, when they seek housing from the council. There's no priority need. So this was an amendment asking for priority need status for families fleeing domestic violence. And because I think we do need to address the hidden homelessness issue. And these are practical solutions that I feel very passionate about, that I probably would be doing the same thing if I was an MP in Parliament, of things that I can do in a practical way to help make the lives of the most vulnerable in our community better.
And what about the NHS? Obviously, a lot has been said during the campaign so far about the NHS, particularly from a Conservative point of view. Whereabouts do you stand on that?
Well, The NHS is why I did my master's at LSE, because I was so sort of disgusted with the way the U.S. health policy treats people and the health inequality, and I wanted to look at the NHS and learn from the NHS as well as the welfare states in Europe. And what I found about the NHS is I thought it was the greatest system to protect everyone, to give free at the point of, every single person can come in no matter what your background is. You don't have to be bankrupt if you have cancer. And I think it's one of the greatest marks of a civil society. And so because I came here for the NHS, I am one of its greatest champions. And I think the more we invest in the NHS, the better.
So when you're hearing the stories where people are saying, oh, goodness me, we're going to go down the US route and possibly various bits are going to be sold off, that's certainly not something that you would be in favour of.
Never. And that would never happen. I mean, under the Conservatives, it would never happen. We've invested in the NHS more year on year than Labour has. We have consistently supported and funded the NHS. And, this is something I think we are all so proud of. And I just don't think that would ever even be a possibility.
Whereabouts do you sit on the taxation question and whether or not we should maybe raise taxes so that actually we can support the NHS and we can support our schools more, or are you very much in favour of tax cuts?
I'm in favour of tax cuts. I mean, I believe that we can still support, our welfare state by actually just people making more money and more entrepreneurs, more business. I think the more our economy grows and the more we attract outward investment, we can have a thriving economy. That's how we can increase our sort of tax base. And I want to promote business, home ownership, a strong economy. Those are the principles that I stand on.
And do you think we can have a strong economy even though that we are going to leave the EU?
Absolutely. And I think supporting the withdrawal agreement is a great way that we can actually negotiate the rest of our trade agreement without losing any sort of, this is not a hard Brexit. This is a slow negotiation, and we're still absolutely carrying on with our same level of commerce. And I think this is the best way for us to still have a very positive relationship with Europe moving forward and still protect our economy.
If you were elected, whereabouts would you live, and would you seek to have a second home near Westminster?
I would need somewhere that was the most affordable. I am not from the establishment, so I need somewhere I can only afford one house.
And whereabouts do you live at the moment?
Ealing.
Okay.
So, and I'm a working mom. I'm a very normal person in terms of, just struggling to get by, putting your child through school. And so if I'm elected, I absolutely want to live here, raise my child here. And, this is the dream. Beaconsfield is the dream place to live. It's where we all aspire to live, and I hope to do the same.
How much did you know about Beaconsfield before you were selected as the candidate?
Well, I did know a lot because it's so close. It's only a 20-minute drive, and it was the first. I went the oldest pub in the world. It's actually slightly outside of the constituency, but you drive through. And I went there while I was heavily, heavily pregnant with my daughter. And so
doesn't sound like the place to go when you're heavily pregnant. The oldest pub in the world, or any pub actually.
I was a little bit. Why have you taken me when I'm so pregnant? But and my daughter loves coming to Odd's Farm and Model Village, and so it's somewhere where I've spent a lot of time. And a lot of my friends, who had children as well, my daughter's 8, have all moved to Beaconsfield. Mm-hmm. It's such a great place for families to live. My daughter's best friend's husband came up to me and said, "You're so lucky. It's our dream to live in Beaconsfield." So it really is the best place to live. And
it's fantastic to hear that even people from Ealing come to Odd's Farm and to the Model Village.
When you make it, when you know that you're a...
and someone from Ohio as well. I didn't imagine I'd be sitting here speaking to somebody from Ohio about Odd's Farm.
These are strange times.
Indeed they are. And how have you found the campaign so far? It's clearly it's and I know that you know this, but it's a slightly unusual campaign. The fact that you're campaigning in on dark nights and rain and coldness. How has it been so far?
Well, I think a lot of people have colds, but
which is never good if you don't and you're going and meeting a lot of people, because you know that you're going to end up with one.
It's been people have been very friendly and very welcoming. We've had a lot of town hall meetings and meetings where people just invite their local neighbors, and that's been fantastic. And the canvassing has been very positive. It's been a very positive campaign. It's a good team, and we're just trying to be sort of very grassroots oriented and talk to as many people as possible. And so,
how does it compare to an American campaign?
well, I think American campaigns are completely out of control. We just the funding, and I think there's a lot of sort of big over the top things that happen in U.S. politics that I'm glad don't happen here. I really like that there's a spending limit, so you can't have sort of who raises the most money affect the outcome like you can in the States. And this is just a better way of conducting politics, I think. And I like how MPs are always connected to their constituency. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important. And it's a much better way of...
If you were over there at the minute, would you be considering voting for Trump in 2020?
No.
I can tell by your face that was definitely a no.
Yeah, that's true. It is a no.
That was Joy Morrissey, who is the Conservative candidate standing in the Beaconsfield constituency at the general election on the 12th of December. And you can hear that again along with my other interviews with the candidates standing in both Beaconsfield and Wycombe, as well as the 2 roundtable discussion programmes that we carried out with the Wycombe and Beaconsfield candidates on our website, which is wycomesound.org.uk. Coming up next, we will hear from Adam Cleary, who is standing as an independent in the Beaconsfield constituency.